So, hi everyone. Welcome to this ParaCoach webinar, which is part of the ParaCoach EU project funded by Erasmus Plus and led by a team of us here at John Moores. This is our second webinar. The first one, we had Maria interview Paul Mosley, a great guy and coach and coach educator with England Athletics. Today we've got another top person in Hannah Cockcroft, but I'll let Maria introduce her. The idea behind Maria's Coaching Corner came out of a conversation with Maria a few weeks back, and she's undertaken a degree in sport coaching. I used to coach Maria, and we've always discussed coaching in much detail. So this is the kind of the brainchild between both of us in terms of how do we support Maria's learning, but at the same time, how do we help her share some of her incredible experiences in parasport? And this Maria's Coaching Corner is in conjunction with ParaCoach. It's really important that we release the voices of athletes in how we understand sport coaching, and I can't think of a better person in Maria to help us do that. So we'll go into that interview, but before we do that, just a few kind of housekeeping rules. If you could keep your microphone and camera off throughout. If you have any questions, we welcome that. Please submit that through the chat function. And where can you just share on social media? You know, we want the message that comes out of these interviews to go out across the EU and globally as well. So if you could tweet, retweet, share, and follow us on Instagram, follow us on Facebook, etc. And just to remind you that this webinar will be recorded and will be available on our ParaCoach YouTube channel, so you can follow up at your own time. But without further ado, I just want to introduce Maria and her kind of interview with Hannah for the next hour or so. Off you go, Hannah. Maria.
Hey, thank you, Tabo, and thanks everybody for coming along and listening. But firstly, I'd quite like to thank Hannah for giving up her time. I know it's a busy time leading up to the Paralympic Games. So if you don't know Hannah, she's a multiple Paralympic, world and European champion. She currently holds all the world records over the distances for the T38 athletes. And so Hannah, thanks for coming along. Could you just give us a wee description, a bit about yourself and a bit about your disability?
Yeah, so I'm Hannah Cockcroft. I am 29 years old tomorrow, so there you go. I'm a wheelchair racer on the Great Britain Paralympic Athletic Team, 5-time Paralympic champion, 12-time world champion, 3-time European champion, and I hold the world records over the 100, 200, 400, 800 and 1500 meters for the T34 classification. My disability is brain damage. So when I was born, I had 2 cardiac arrests within 24 hours. The 2 cardiac arrests left me with multiple areas of brain damage. And then as I grew, it also left me with damage to my nerve endings, which then left me with deformed feet and deformed legs, which is why I use a wheelchair. And I also have problems with my fine motor skills. So I can't tie shoelaces. I really struggle with my handwriting, things like that, ultimately. But never let it stop me. I just live a very normal life.
Yeah, and yeah, it's obvious to everyone you haven't let that hold you back. With, I think every athlete would dream to have some of the titles and accolades you have. So it's a pleasure having you in our company. So today we're going to just discuss a few topics. So we'll start off with like growing up, disability perception, wheelchair racing and coaching, Tokyo and the pandemic. But I think from a coaching perspective, it's good to learn a bit about the athlete, because I think if we know a bit about how the athlete feels, about their growing up and stuff, then we can really help support them to get the most out of them. So just like touching on like growing up, and especially with a disability, what was it like having a disability and growing up? Was it like quite a smooth sailing process, not process, but way of life, or did you experience hardships, and like how did you overcome that?
So for me, I feel like growing up, I had a very normal childhood. I have two brothers who are both able-bodied, and essentially anything that they did, my parents found a way for me to do too. So, you know, if I wanted to go play in the park, I would go and play in the park, or whatever it is. I went to mainstream schools. I basically just followed them around, which to my older brother's distaste. He did not like it that he was known as my older brother. But yeah, I always remember my childhood being just really good, just really normal. I was never bullied at school. I was never treated any differently. I did everything the same. I think, don't mind Nathan, he's just smashing things out of the way in there. Much like you, our living room is, well, I presume your house is also full of suitcases and boxes right now. So, but yeah, so growing up, yeah, I did everything, and the only place in life that I was ever treated any differently was when it came to sport. You know, sport for me growing up just wasn't a thing, because at school the teachers just didn't have the facilities or the education to know how to get me involved. So PE for me when I was at school was reading a book in the library, it was doing my homework, it was, if I was really lucky, it was keeping score of my friends' games. It was never getting involved. And I was always quite an active youngster. At 3 years old, I decided I wanted to be prima ballerina. Not the most realistic of dreams for a girl that can't even stand up yet. But my mom went out, she knocked on every dance school door in the local area, obviously got laughed out of a lot of places, and told there was no way I could do it. And one lady, a lady called Penny Alexander, she just said, yeah, sure, like I won't make a prima ballerina, but I can make her dance. And this lady taught me to walk, so I took my first steps with Penny. I danced for 17 years with Penny, and I say dance loosely, you know, she would set a routine and the class would do it and I would always be one step behind, but I had the best time because I was involved and I was doing what everyone else did. And I think obviously I was always aware that I was different, and I never really understood why, because, you know, your parents can explain till they're blue in the face that, oh, you had these heart attacks and this is what happened. When you're young, like, that means nothing to you, like it's just words. So I only have like small memories of being frustrated by that. So like for my 5th birthday I got sent a Barbie in a wheelchair, and my mom saw it on telly. It was only being sold in America, but at the time, like, I hated my wheelchair. I would opt to be carried, I would opt to try and walk, I would like anything to not be in my wheelchair, because I felt so different in it, because we didn't see it. You didn't see wheelchair users. They were not on telly, they were not in magazines, they were not anywhere, and I didn't know anybody else that had a disability. So my wheelchair was like the worst thing in the world, and it just lived in a cupboard under the stairs, and that's where it stayed. And my mom got me this Barbie in a wheelchair for my 5th birthday. You couldn't buy them in England, so she wrote to Toys R Us in America and just explained the situation and explained that, you know, I had a disability, I needed to learn to use this wheelchair and I just wouldn't touch it. And Barbie was my hero, so as soon as Barbie was using hers, well, I was away. I didn't mind sitting in my wheelchair with Barbie. And then I think another memory was just obviously like around 12, 13, when your friends are starting to grow up a bit, you know, you're starting to wear heels and you're starting to look at shorter dresses and And I remember my best friend getting her first pair of high heels, and I obviously came home and was like, oh, Mom, Abby's got these, like, I want a set as well. And Mom had to sit down and kind of say, well, your splints won't fit in them, you can't have them. And I think, that was one time that I was just like, this sucks. Like I
Yeah.
can't be a girl because I'm disabled. This is ridiculous.
And
And it's not the case, but it's just what, especially when I was growing up, it was what you were taught to see as a female, and that was when I felt different. But all of the times, like, I just was treated the same as everyone else, which was the perfect upbringing, really.
definitely.
Just took me a while to find sport, but that was fine. Like, I did everything else. I played violin, sang in a choir, I went to brownies, I learned to swim, I did all sorts, so I was never left out.
No, that's brilliant. You know, you've spoken about maybe some of these like, although you've had a brilliant childhood, you've mentioned maybe a couple of things that has been a bit rubbish. You know, has maybe perhaps having like a disability, especially growing up and being a teenager and seeing your friends do like these certain things that you might not be able to do, has that ever had an effect on your mental health, or maybe how you view yourself?
I think it definitely had an effect on how I viewed myself.
Mm-hmm.
I only until recently I would hide under like really baggy clothes. Like, I didn't want people to look at me.
Yeah.
I hated that attention, and it was only really when I got into sport and obviously got better at what I did that I actually didn't
Yeah.
mind it, and I could kind of say to myself, oh, like, people look at me because they recognize me or because I'm the best in the world at what I do. But yeah, like, growing up, like I said, I didn't like my wheelchair, so I actually walked everywhere until I got into sport, and it was incredibly uncomfortable. It left me in ridiculous amounts of pain, but in my head, because that's what I was surrounded by, that was what I had to do to be accepted. And like, I don't know if you'll have had it, but you walk around a shop and people stop and they stare at you and they point at you, and you're kind of like, in my head, I look like everyone else, so it reminds you that you're different, and it's horrible. I don't mind it as much when it's kids, but when it was adults, it really got to me, because it reminded me how different I was. And you know, I still get it now. Like, I actually use my wheelchair more now. Obviously, like, I struggle to get around a bit more. I'm a bit older now, so walking is more difficult, but I actually use my wheelchair more now for a confidence thing. You know, people don't stare at a wheelchair anymore.
No.
People are kind of just used to that. But if I got out and walked, like, a couple of years ago, I had a guy literally follow me around Asda because I was walking. He literally followed me just to watch me.
That's terrible.
And
Like,
it's so threatening, but at the same time, it's embarrassing, because like, you'll know how much work goes into learning to walk when you have a disability and you're told that you'll never walk. You should be able to be proud of that, but actually people take that away and make you feel like a freak because you do kind of you just do what you need to do. So yeah, this definitely had effects on how I viewed myself, but I think I'm naturally quite a confident person, which definitely helps, because it just puts it back in my head and I'm just like, oh, whatever, it's fine.
No, because I think I've only ever had once. I was walking home from training. It was in my town. It's quite a small place. I'm probably really the only one who was like CP and stuff. And it was a boy who was maybe a couple of years younger than me, was like kind of imitating my walk and like laughing and I've never had that before, and it makes you, it does make you feel like quite rubbish, and it's like, oh, you just want to be like accepted. And I know that was something you've spoken about, and like, you know, how you've had to deal with that discriminating, not being able to join with the PE class, being made to feel quite small and strange for just going about Asda. And how do you deal with like that discrimination and stuff, and had that powered you to perhaps say, no, I'm going to pursue sport, it doesn't matter?
So I think within one of the reasons why I'm probably as determined as I am to be as successful as I can in sport is kind of it's this thing. I've always had it. If you tell me I can't do anything, I will go out of my way to find a way to do it. And that was what sport was for me. You know, my younger brother's quite sporty, so I always used to go along, watch him play rugby, watch him play football, and always think like, why can't I do that? I want to do that. So as soon as I found my pathway into sport, I started playing wheelchair basketball. I just said yes to everything. You know, the team got me involved in obviously basketball. I played some wheelchair tennis, played some wheelchair rugby. I tried the seated discus, and then I eventually found wheelchair racing. And even now, like, I'll still say yes to anything. Like, you give me a go and I'll just try it just to make a point. And I definitely think that's embedded into me just from having a childhood of, well, you can't do that, because actually, like, unless you try it, you're not going to know. And that's the same for everybody. You have to try it before you know if you can or can't do that. And it's no one's decision but yours. But I was never really given that decision. I think outside of sport, though, if anything, is I'm quite self-conscious about everything that I do. Like I said, I use my wheelchair, my normal wheelchair, more to get around now. Even if I just have to nip into a shop and I could walk it, I naturally just get my wheelchair out to avoid feeling rubbish, to be honest, because it is one of those things, like, it happens and it makes you so aware of yourself, and it's quite upsetting. So you deal with it by coming home and going like, oh, it doesn't matter, but deep down you're like,
You know,
that
it does
hurt.
matter.
Like, it, like you said, you knew it hurts because you don't even notice that you're doing it. Like, I know that I walk really weird, and you'll know it too because you see me walking around, but that's how I get about. Like, no one walks the same, so it's so silly. But yeah, I think sport is kind of my outlet to show people that, all right, I can't walk, but bloody hell, you probably can't run quicker than I can push.
Exactly. No. And talking a bit about, like, your pathway into sport, how did you discover wheelchair racing?
So yeah, my pathway into sport started when I was 12. I went to secondary school, and there was a boy who went to the school next door to me that played wheelchair basketball. And he kind of saw me on the bus getting to school. He told his basketball team about me, and so they went into some of the local schools in our area to do demos. So they made sure that my school was on the list. I came in, did a demo. It was the first time I'd ever seen parasport. It was the first time I'd ever met a kind of another disabled person, when I met Harry, who went to school next door. So it's kind of quite big when you're 12 and you've got a disability. To have not met another disabled person until that age is quite frankly ridiculous. But that was it. So yeah, the basketball team came in. I absolutely loved it. That was what made me accept the wheelchair as my mode of transport, because these guys were so quick, they were so agile, like, their chairs were incredible, and it blew my mind that they were not sat in these massive clunky NHS pieces of rubbish that I had sat at home. So my dad took me around to the coach's house that evening, and he just said, yeah, come train with us. So I trained with the Cardinals for 6 years. And like I said, they just got me involved in loads of stuff. And school, over time, kind of realised that how well I was doing with basketball, and started seeing that, you know, when you take the red tape away from PE lessons, you can actually adapt them to suit anybody, and you just have to have the confidence and maybe just do a little bit of research. And most sports you're able to get people involved. So school started slowly adapting PE lessons so that I could get involved. So when everyone else was doing athletics, I would sit up on the top field and throw a discus. Something really simple, but there was no difference between everyone else standing up and throwing it and me sitting down and throwing it, aside from the fact that I could throw it a little bit further and someone had to go and get it for me. So that was kind of my step into athletics. Just through school entered me into like a local disability sport competition, and that was the first time I saw wheelchair racing. I thought it looked cool, but I was like, I have no idea how to try that, so whatever. I went in, I won silver in the discus, and got invited to a British Athletics Talent Day. So you've probably been through one, but you go along and there's all these sports there, and you can just give them a go. And yeah, wheelchair racing was there, so I had no interest. I did not want to get in that chair, but my dad is a typical Yorkshire man and made me try everything. So I tried everything, and wheelchair racing was the last one of the day. So that was me, like, just got in the chair and fell in love, really. Just that was
wise
it.
words from your dad then. Imagine if you hadn't listened.
I don't know about wise words, more like physical brute force of get in the chair.
No, and like, you know, from that point you found wheelchair racing, and how was it to find then like a club and a coach that would kind of cater for your needs? Was it quite an easy thing, or was it quite difficult?
So I was quite lucky that so the person who put me in the race chair that day was Dr. Ian Thompson, so Tanya Gray Thompson's husband.
Yeah.
Like Ian was fab, you know, he obviously saw that I had a passion for the sport straight away. And within a week I was up at Tanya and Ian's house in a room full of trophies and medals, and
Wow.
using a Paralympic bronze medal as a coaster. Like, it blew my mind. So kind of just went straight to the top, because how else would I do it? So yeah, Tanya and Ian lent me a chair for the first kind of year of my pushing, just so I could find my feet and see if it's what I wanted. And mum and dad went out and raised money for my own race chair.
Wow.
But like, even for a beginner's chair, you're looking at about £5,000. So
Yeah.
it's not money that my mum and dad had hanging around. So we needed that time. And Ian helped me find a local club. So I went to Paul Mosley, who I know you had a chat with a few weeks ago. Went along to the club in Leeds, because that was like the local Yorkshire club. So I was quite lucky that I had a club that was local. I had, you know, a world-class coach just willing to help me out straight away. And that I had very supportive parents, really. You know, my mom, as soon as I started wheelchair racing, she would pick me up after school and we'd go straight to the track, just because I enjoyed it. And just, you know, there was no kind of training plans, or there was nothing planned around it. It was just like, come on, let's go track, let's just go and have a run about. So I was really lucky to have that support. So it wasn't too difficult, but I feel like it's not that easy for a lot of people.
No, yeah, I think, you know, especially like throwing yourself into it. I know myself, having supportive parents makes a world of a difference, especially having a disability. Like, I wouldn't have found para sport without it. And I guess working with Paul, how did you find that? Like, you know, it's more like you obviously, like, Paul doesn't have like a disability, and like you're trying to explain things that maybe you experienced during training or outside of training. How did you find like working with somebody else without a disability and trying to like them to kind of understand how you feel, and kind of designing sessions to make the most of that?
You know, I think with Paul it was easy. He was, I know he's on this call, so his head's going to be growing bigger and bigger, but he was so welcoming from the off. Like, you just got there and you felt comfortable straight away. He was already coaching two other guys, so Nick Smith and Matty Hicklin, who I became really, really good friends with. And he just, the best thing was that it wasn't about being the next Paralympian, world champion, whatever it was. It was about going there and having fun. So we'd go along to training, and it wasn't always like, oh, you're doing this wrong, or you're not doing the session right. It was more of, well, what do you want to do today? You know, like, how are you feeling? Have you had a nice day at school? Like, there was never any pressure. And we'd just play games, and I'd just race against the boys, and it was just so much fun. And I think that was kind of what drew me into it, seeing the fun side of it. I don't think every coach is like that. You know, for Paul, it was never about my disability. It was just about working with me as an individual and saying, okay, try this. Okay, why can't you do that? How do you feel? Do you think you could do this instead? And it was always an ongoing conversation as to just developing my knowledge and as well just developing his. You know, I think Paul even now would admit he doesn't know everything about every disability. Nobody does. You know, if you asked me to describe you running, Maria, I'd be like, no idea, mate. I've got no clue. And I think that's what makes a brilliant coach, is when they accept that they don't know everything, and that you can learn from each other the whole way through. And I just feel, even now, you know, I've been racing 14 years, so we're going back like at least 12 years since I started working with Paul. And even now, you know, he's still there behind the scenes. If I want a phone call, if I want a session, whatever I need, he's always there on hand. And I'm super, super lucky to have that support, and
Yeah.
even just to have someone who, you know what, if I said I don't want to do this professionally anymore, he'd be like, all right, cool, just come for a push then. And it
Yeah.
doesn't matter like what medals you're going to bring back to the club. It matters if you're still enjoying it. And I think that's the most important thing about sport, about para sport especially.
And that's brilliant that you've built up that relationship. And like as you said, even somebody with cerebral palsy, there's a massive range as to like how that affects them. And I guess now, when you're your proper professional part of your career, you've got a really successful relationship with Jenny Banks. And what's that relationship like now?
Oh, it's totally different to my relationship with Paul.
So yeah, I guess you're now, compared to say like when you were starting out, it was a new sport, you were just going along and like kind of enjoying the sessions. And I guess now with Jenny, I think like us all, and like on funding and stuff, we've got targets to meet, and kind of how does that work with like with your kind of relationship, and how does your partnership go?
So I think obviously before Jenny I had Peter Eriksson. So
Yeah.
Peter took me to my first Paralympic titles, he took me to my first world titles. He did a lot of groundwork, and I think just to mention Peter, he put himself on a course. When he started coaching me, he admitted that he knew nothing about brain injury. He had no idea how to coach me, so he took himself away. He did loads of reading. He did a course on cerebral palsy and brain injury, and then came back and coached me. So he did a lot of groundwork, which I thought was, I actually only learned that recently, which I think is phenomenal, just to have that level of investment in your athletes. And just admitting that you don't know it all, but being willing to learn. I think that is a massive, massive key part of being a coach. And Jenny, I started working with Jenny just after London 2012. So Peter went back to Canada, became the Canadian head coach. And I started working with Jenny then, and I think our relationship has changed a lot kind of over the years that we've been working together. When we first started working together, I was in dream world, obviously. I'd just become Paralympic champion, all my dreams had come true. So she had the difficult task of bringing me back down to earth and making me do the work, which it did turn into a lot of arguments. It was not an easy transition, I don't think. And I mean, you'll know yourself when you're changing from one coach to another. They're very, very, every coach is very, very different. So Jenny was so different to Peter, and that took me it took me a long time to kind of relax with that, because I had my ways with Peter and Jenny was so different.
And what way were you different, if I can?
So Peter, I was scared of Peter. The fear of God into me, but in a good way. Like I respected him so much that I never wanted to let him down. And we were very, very focused on the sprints when I worked with Peter. So did the 100, 200. When I started working with Jenny, the training was just very, very different. So I went from with Peter doing like my max mileage about 6 miles to suddenly with Jenny like easily covering 10 miles in a session.
Oh, wow,
and that killed me off. That was hard. I'd just come home from training and be like, Jenny, why am I doing 10 miles to do 100 meters? I don't get it. And only over time of discussion and understanding why you're doing a session, very quickly Jenny realized that I always like to know why I was doing something. I don't like doing things if there's no reason to do it. So even now when she changes a session, she knows that I'm going to go, right, why are we doing that? Like, what is the point in this?
Well,
so that was
natural.
So that was I think that was natural for me, but actually a lot of athletes just go, oh, that's what coaches put down, that's what I'll do. Whereas I found it really important to understand what the main target was. And then, so for example, it was only when I started working with Jenny that we did fartleks. Long pushes with B play within it. And I did them for like 2 years. I just didn't get it. I had no idea what I was doing in this session. So one day I just sat down with her and I just went, I know I've been doing these for ages, Jenny, but I don't understand what I'm doing. Like, I'm just pushing. I don't understand the aim of this session at all.
Yeah.
And it was only by being that honest and open with her that she went, right, okay, this session's not working for you then. And we changed. Every time I had that session, we made it a lot more structured, and we basically just scrapped that session and made something new and different that she'd not tested before. But I think with Jen, I mean, you'll have seen it. Mine and Jenny's relationship has been very up and down, and I think that's the most honest way of saying it. We're not always the best of friends, but she has made me very successful. I think she expects a lot from me, which sometimes I find frustrating, and she knows that. But at the same time, I find it a massive privilege that a coach that is so established can expect so much from me. You know, Jenny coached Tanni Grey-Thompson. She coached Louise Savage, who's a top Australian wheelchair racer. She really has coached the best in our sport. So sometimes I get a bit frustrated with her, but ultimately, overall, it comes down to, it's that same thing. It's that communication, and that was what I had to learn going from Peter to Jenny. With Peter, I was an athlete that just went, yeah, okay, yeah, I'll do that, Whereas with Jenny, I think, you know, I moved to Jenny when I was 20 years old, so I then grew with her, and she went through probably some of my hardest years. I went off to uni, I did all these things, and obviously had all the success that came with it, and that changed you as a person. So she had to deal with me changing and me getting a bit more demanding, and also just learning. You know, I'm not cerebral palsy. I am a little bit different to that. So she had to accept that she had to learn about me as much as I had to learn all these new things that she wanted me to do.
So yeah, I guess like a big thing is communication with you, and as you've like shown everyone and explained, I think as you've kind of grown older and with like all your different coaches, you seem to be a bit more confident, and it's important for you to kind of communicate instead of being a bit, when you were younger, just kind of going along with it, and now you're wanting to understand what's the point of this, and then that, well, I'm guessing that will help you kind of to understand the session, and then you can put in the most effort you can do for that.
I think that's a big difference between being kind of like to be fair, at London 2012 I was a beginner. I was not elite. There was no way you can call me elite at London 2012. I was lucky, and I think communication is what makes you elite, because that's how you learn what is the key output of this session. What am I trying to learn? What am I trying to change in my technique, or what are we working on here? And you have to communicate that to the athlete. Like, I know athletes that just go training, they read the session, they're like, cool, right, I've got to do, I don't know, whatever it is, 6 400s today, right? I'll just get it done, I'll just power it off. Whereas with Jenny now, like in my training plan, she'll write down, like, in this session you need to focus on high elbows, or your arm speed, or, you know, relax on the second 100, whatever it might be. There's always a focus, and that's something that I really appreciate that, because then I know, right, in this session I am doing 6 400s, but this is the key output. And then as well, I notice, because I know what I've been working on, and then notice going into a race how that has helped the race. So it's kind of something that I've stolen, and I coach my own athlete now, a girl called Anya, and I'm always writing that in her program. I don't know if she does it. She probably doesn't. But I find it quite helpful, and I've seen it in her performances throughout this season, especially, you know, when for a month we've said, like, right, this month we're working on getting your elbows up and really powering the rim. And then you watch a race and she breaks the PB, because that's what she's done in the race. So it's rewarding to see. You know, I've kind of seen it from both sides. It's rewarding to see that it's paying off, but as an athlete, it's really nice to have that one thing that you're actually working on for that day.
So how have you found then, like, being like the athlete and then now like taking on a kind of coaching role?
It's very challenging. I feel like I have a lot to learn. I think like you'll know it. Like you look at a session and you're like, oh, doing this again is boring. I'm bored of this session. Honestly, like now I'm writing sessions because Anya's a lot like that. She'll go like, oh, I don't like it when you set me a long rule. Don't set me a long rule. I don't want to do it. And I look at it and I'm like, there's only a certain maximum variation of this session that I can set you. Like we're working on 100 meters. Like there's nothing I can do that's going to make 100 meters stronger if I'm like not setting you what you need to do. So it's really, really interesting just seeing the struggles that probably Jenny has with me. When I don't tell Jenny how the training's gone for a week, like I have it with Anya all the time, like how's training this week? Yeah, it's all right. And I'm like, give me something else. And then Jenny rings me and she goes, how's training? I'm like, yeah, it's all right.
Yeah, it's fine, dude. I know what it's like. So like you kind of saying about things like maybe like setbacks or say doing something, oh, I don't really want to do this session, or even you speaking with your athlete and she's like, oh, I don't really fancy doing that session. How do you like kind of resolve that and kind of get on with it and kind of make sure both parties are happy with it and can like move on?
So I think with Anya, as her coach, because she's still young, she's only 15, and ultimately, we have no aims. I don't expect her to want to be the next Paralympic champion. If she wants to do this for fun, that's fine. So when she says to me, and Nathan coaches her as well, when she says to me and Nathan, like, I don't like it when you set me a long push, then we say, okay, do the long push, but not on your rollers, like go to the local park, or if you can't get to the local park, then we'll just change the session totally and we'll make it into like, I don't know, like 6 5-minute pushes, something short of, or give her an aim. So we've got that kind of flexibility because there's no end goal. You can just have fun with it and that's totally fine. Whereas with Jenny and me, like I'll go, oh, I don't want to do this session, and then she'll give me 5 minutes and I'll get over myself and I'll just get on with it. Because I realise that in the broader picture of everything, there's a reason for that session being there, and there's a reason why we're doing it at this specific time. And ultimately, like you say, we've got Tokyo in a month, so I know that I have to do it. And I think obviously, like I'm 28, so I've had the time where I've gone, I don't want to do that, and someone's changed it for me. Whereas now you just got to take it seriously and get on with it. So it's all about mindset and just realizing that just like no one enjoys getting up and going to work every day, not always going to enjoy going training, and that's just part of the job. You just got to get it done, and that's what it is. Like you'll know it. Some days you go to track and you just get it done. Not every day I get there and I think, right, today I've got to think about my elbows, I've got to think about this. Some days I get there and I go, and other days I get there and I'm buzzing and I can't wait to work on things, and that's just life, unfortunately. So sometimes I just force my way through it. That's all I can do.
Well, I guess there's like they say that there's a mindset that separates champions and people, that there's difference between people that are hardworking and people with talent. And I guess, like you said, and proven to everyone, a mindset kind of overtakes like that talent. So and coming on to talent, you've got the Paralympic Games coming up. How are you feeling for it?
You know what, I wish we were getting on the plane tomorrow, because I'm driving myself mad trying to prepare in. I've seen you in the heat chamber and I raise you a plastic greenhouse. So I've been training in a plastic greenhouse with a heater in it. Wow. My S&C coach has COVID, so I'm back in the garage gym. I'm excited to get out there, just to get out of my house.
No, and like how has it been then, like training with like the whole pandemic and COVID and stuff?
I feel like my training hasn't changed that massively. Like I've managed to keep going over the last 18 months pretty normally. Obviously for a long time we had no tracks, so we were either on the rollers or out on the roads. And we had no gym, so we built a gym in the garage. So I've been able to just keep going. I think these last few weeks before heading to the games have probably been the hardest for me, because I've done that preparation for games twice now, and I know what works for me, and it's not this. But it's, we have limited options, you know. We have to stay safe. COVID is absolutely rampant at the moment. It's everywhere. And so the safest option is being at home and being away from people. And I'm a very sociable person. I'm not good at staying indoors, so that's frustrating me a lot. But like, training's going really well. I'm flying on the track. I've had a really good season so far. So I think I just want to get there now and prove that it's all been worth it. I think that's the scary thing is, and I don't know if you feel the same, but the scary thing for me is at this point, whatever happens is it's not really in our control. You know, if we get COVID, or if someone on that plane has COVID and we get it, or someone in my apartment in Tokyo gets COVID and I get it, like, there are still so many unknowns. And I think this point in your preparation is all about control. And this cycle, this year, we've lost that control completely. So yeah, I'm prepared. I'm ready to go. What happens next? Let's just get this next 6 weeks out of the way. Then I can stop living in fear.
I guess because you are just relying on like other people to be following the rules and doing everything as safely as you can. And I understand, like, now, like we're in this like 14-day isolation period, and you kind of, it's horrible. You see like the stories of people not getting to compete at the Olympics and because of COVID, and God forbid that happens to anyone. But so coming, like, speaking about like the Paralympics and stuff, like, how did like the postponement of the Paralympics, how did that like affect like training? Do you think was that a kind of a blessing in disguise, or like, as you said, you're just a bit fed up and just want to get it done?
So I think when the games were initially postponed, I was the one that cried. I was crying my eyes out. I was ready to go. You know, we'd been to Australia for a month's training camp. Like, I was ready to get on that plane and go and compete. So I was absolutely gutted. And kind of, I think I was really lucky because Nathan, obviously my boyfriend, is a para athlete as well. And I think if we hadn't have lived together, if we hadn't been together for the whole thing, then COVID could have been very, very different for me. But he kind of said, like, when the news came out, he was like, okay, then we just carry on. Like, we just do what we do. There's nothing better to do but train. So let's just train. So we went out every day. Like, we found a half marathon route around our house that we went out and did every day. And you know what? I think looking back, for me, the whole pandemic was a bit of a blessing. Like, if you have to pick a positive out of such a negative 18 months, it was the fact that it gave me that time to step back and just reevaluate everything. You know, I'm the athlete that I hate missing a competition. Like, I'm always competing. I'm always on a plane somewhere. I'm always for the next training session, next training camp, like wherever it might be. We're always on the move. And I love that. I love doing that. But just having that kind of year sitting in the house, I could step back and did the training that I enjoyed. You know, there was no end goal. So I could just do the sessions with, you know, we started doing Zoom sessions with the club that I train with in Liverpool. And Paul held Zoom sessions as well that I joined in a few of them. It was nice just to not be a slave to the program, you know, not what do I have to do today? It was like, what do I feel like doing today? And I really enjoyed that element of it. It gave me a bit of the passion for my sport back and made me realize why I love it. But it also gave me the opportunity to work on things that sometimes just get brushed under the rug, you know. So for me, I learned to push in a new style of glove. So I started using solid gloves, which is something that I've been trying to do for like 3 years now. And every time I picked them up, I've had to put them back down because I couldn't get hang of them quick enough. So I had 18 months literally just to practice these gloves. And I think that's what's made a massive, massive difference for me this year. I've come out and I've got this kind of this advantage that I've learned to use this new equipment that other people just haven't had the time to do. So yeah, like, I feel like as annoying as it all was, it was actually quite nice. Even just a bit old, like, decorated my house, you know, all good.
And you're saying like you had to do like Zoom sessions and stuff, and I think a lot of athletes and coaches, obviously we couldn't like go to track and train together. Like how did you and Jenny kind of get about coaching when you couldn't be together? How did that work?
So I think with Jenny, like I don't see Jenny every day. Jenny lives in Loughborough, I live in Chester, so I see Jenny once every 2 weeks, if that.
Yeah.
So we didn't really have to make that much difference, to be honest. You know, Jenny sends me my training log once a week. She sets my sessions weekly, so she still just sent them, and then we just follow it up with a phone call, like in the middle of the week. Right, what's working? What have you got access to? You know, for gym, before we built the gym in the garage, our gym coach came like the night before lockdown came into place. He came and left loads of dumbbells on our doorstep. So then Jenny just took a note of all that and wrote a gym session that we could do in the front room. And it was always like everyone, it was just trial and error. So she would set me a session and I would do it on the roller. I spent far too much time on the roller, but did it all on there, and she would ring me after it and go, right, how was that? And if I went back and said it didn't work, then we'd just change it and try something different. And then like the Zoom sessions, for me it was just, you know, Jenny wasn't on them, so it was with Nathan's coaches that I did most of them. But it was just company, it was just for someone else that wasn't Nathan to talk to. And it was really nice just to still have that kind of team element. Just to have that company. So it wasn't a massive difference between the way that me and Jenny work anyway, because we do a lot of our work virtually, so it was okay.
And how because I used to do like a bit of long distance coaching, and that didn't quite work for me. And how is like it with long distance coaching for you? Like how do you make that work?
I think because it's something that I've always had, I'm just used to it. So obviously, like my first year with Ian Thompson, he lived up in Middlesbrough and I was down in Halifax. So a lot of that he did through my dad, and my dad kind of overlooked my training. And then Peter lived in Birmingham and I lived in Halifax. So again, like we would just meet halfway every other week and train together. And ultimately my coaches really rely on the logs that I fill in. So every week I fill in like a document that says Jenny writes in the training that I'm supposed to do, and then I write in the training that I've done, along with like my mileage, how I found the session. So with Jenny we just go easy, medium or hard, and then I put in like my sleep quality, the amount of sleep I got, my heart rate, things like that, so Jenny can kind of track where I'm at fitness wise. And I think because that's something I've always done, I'm kind of used to it. But I moved to Chester 2.5 years ago, because I trained in Halifax on my own for 10 years. So aside from my one session a week with Paul in Leeds and my one session every other week with Jenny in Loughborough, I was on my own for everything else. And it got to a point, I mean, in 2018 I just had an absolutely dire season. I wasn't performing, I was racing like rubbish. And to be honest, I was just bored. Like I couldn't motivate myself to get up and go training anymore. So that was one of the reasons why I moved here to Chester. Obviously I moved in with Nathan, but he trains for the club over in Liverpool, and just having, you know, not having my coach there, it's not massive. Like I just get on with my session and that's fine, but just having that camaraderie with other people and that little bit of competition. You know, I train with Sammy Kinghorn now, who's obviously one of my best mates on the team, so we're so close in times and everything, that having that little bit of competition really pushed me along. And I think for me that's been really important in the last few years. But coaching wise, I'm at a point where I could probably just coach myself. I know what works, I know what doesn't work. Sometimes I just need that external motivation of someone going, come on, get it done.
And it's, I guess, you've got that experience, and I guess, like some athletes may not get to that point, but I guess you know what works for you, and that's brilliant. And having that open relationship with your coach and saying like this works, this hasn't, and then talking about it. So just going back to Tokyo, what are your goals for the games? And we know that you're the golden girl. So I imagine it'll be something of a similar.
Yeah, so yeah, 2 golds is the aim. I don't know how easy it's going to be. It's getting harder every single games, but
yeah,
I always figure if you're going to a Paralympics, why go for anything but gold? Everyone should aim for gold. That's the only point in being there.
Yeah, and like, you know, you go into the games being like the favorite and stuff, and like, how do you and your coach kind of deal and kind of prepare for that pressure? I guess you're like a well-known name, everybody knows about you. So yeah, how do you manage that?
I have to put a lot of trust in Jenny and her program. That obviously she's very aware of, so she knows she has to get that right, which can cause some tension when things aren't going so well. But yeah, I think Jenny we've been working together so long now that the pressure doesn't really get to me until I get there and I get to the championships. So she knows that when we get there, she just needs to do what I say, which sounds really bossy, but she kind of just knows how I work. So as long as she's there and she's just got to keep talking to me to keep me calm, just remind me what's going on. And you know, even now, like, so she's been texting me all week, like, have you remembered to put strawberry laces in your suitcase? Have you remembered to bring your stretcher band to do in the call room? Have you remembered to do this? Like, she just constantly reminded me, like, that she's watching out for me, that she knows what I need to do, and that she's going to be there for the whole process. And I think a lot of it, you know, the distance coaching, the programs, the communication, it all just comes down to trust. Like, I trust her program and she trusts that I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
And we trust each other in the fact that we both want this to be successful. We both want the same thing. Which obviously I know I want it, and I truly believe that Jenny wants a few golds too. So it all comes down to trust, and then it's just knowing your athlete. So she knows exactly what to do with me on race day. And as long as she does that, then I keep calm. And if she doesn't do that, then I don't.
I guess, like, from me, it sounds like it's just like a great relationship you have. And like, I guess like that's taken time for her to learn about what makes you tick and when's it right for me to come in or step back. And no, I feel like that's something that all athletes should have, and it's, I think, important for like a coach to kind of learn and listen and speak to the athlete and see what they need for the competition, rather to think about what they think that you should do.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
Yeah. And just to finish off, we've kind of got a little bit of a debate and a question that, so me and Tabo kind of always speak a bit about as a coach. So I guess you've also got this coach athlete perspective. Should a coach be focused on the athlete as an individual, or should they kind of think about their impairment? And I was just wondering what you think about that.
So I think that you should look at every athlete as an individual. I think especially with the disabilities that we both have, you know, cerebral palsy and brain damage covers such a wide spectrum of actual impairment. It's insane. So you have to look at the athlete as an individual, I think, because, you know, like, so the girls that I race against really frustrate me because, for example, when we were racing in Switzerland, there was one day I raced like the 100, 400, 800, and they were like, oh my God, that's so much. That's so hard. How are you doing that? We're not going to do that. I got really frustrated. I was like, well, just try it. Like, you don't know. And I know that for a long time, people would say to me, like, that's too much. You can't do that. Whereas Jenny understands that most of the time, I'm just going to do it anyway. Like, she'll go, I don't think you should do that. You probably won't manage it. And I'll go, all right, watch me. And it drives her mad. But she knows that that's how I work as an individual. So I train with mostly guys. So Jenny coaches Rich Kiyosaro as well, and then obviously I train a lot with Nathan. So when we go away on training camps, for a long time before Sammy moved down to Chester, it was me, Rich, and Nath. And she'd always go, right, the boys are doing this, Han, you're doing this. And I'd go, no, I'll do what they're doing.
Yeah.
And she'd go, all right, but I think it's too much. And I'd go, all right, well, we'll see. And she knows that for me as an individual, like if you said that to one of the girls that I race against, they'd probably go, okay, yeah, I'll do the lesser session.
Yeah.
But she knows for me, that's what makes me tick. So it doesn't always come down to impairment, what you can and can't do. It's how hard are you willing to push yourself? Like how far out of your comfort zone are you willing to go? I'm one of the only girls in my class to race on solid gloves. And it's taken me a long time to learn how to do it. But I was just like Jenny kept saying, like, put them down, put your harness back on. And I was like, no, I'm going to get this. And I think I'm a stubborn person, so I'll just keep pushing. But that's why you have to focus on the individual, because it can vary so much. And a lot of the time, if they're willing to try it, then just let them try it, because you'll know, like, you know where your limits are. You know when to say stop. And I'm not afraid of saying, okay, this is me. But I'm also not afraid of saying, I'm going to try this. So if she was a coach that went, well, on paper, you shouldn't be able to do that, then we just wouldn't work, because I'd be like, I'm going to try it anyway.
Yeah. Well, I guess like for me, I guess it's a combination of the two. Like as you said, everybody's completely different, especially you said some of the girls in your class say, oh, that's a bit too much or too little, it's not enough or whatever. I guess maybe everyone has their individual needs within an impairment, but also everybody has a different mindset. So as like you're really determined and will get that hard graft done, whereas somebody that's just a bit too much. So yeah, it's an interesting topic, and I think it's something that I want to explore more, and it's good to hear like other people's kind of interpretations of that kind of question. And just last question, I'm aware like you've been like I've had you for like an hour, but like what is your advice for like a disabled person to get involved in sport, and how can like a coach, a parent or a carer kind of support them to get to where they want to go?
So I think getting into sport, my advice would just be say yes to everything. You know, like I already said, I didn't want to try wheelchair racing, and I got forced to basically try it. But if my dad hadn't have done that, then I wouldn't be where I am today. So any opportunity you get, take it, because I always say if you don't love it, then you'll learn from it. So you'll either learn that you don't like it, or you'll learn that maybe you like a section of it but you like doing that in another way, or you'll always learn something. So take every opportunity. Check out the Parasport website, because there's all the local clubs are listed on there, so you can find what's in your local area, which is sometimes the most difficult thing to do. You know, if I hadn't have met Harry, who went to the school next door, I wouldn't have known that we had a local wheelchair basketball team. So don't leave it to chance. If you want to get involved, just stick your neck out and go and find it. I think for parents, don't wrap your child in bubble wrap. Like if they want to try it, let them make their own decisions, let them make their own mistakes. You know, my mum always said to me, like, we'll just let you do what you want, because if you get hurt, then you'll learn from it and you'll know what you can't do anymore, and that's fine. And I think for coaches, just be available, just be there, just realize that people, they do come and try a sport and drop out, and it's super frustrating, but you gave them an opportunity that without you they never would have had. So obviously I went through several sports, like I said, and I'm sure for a lot of the coaches there, it was annoying that they gave me their time, and then I didn't end up taking it on. But actually without them, I wouldn't be the athlete that I am today. And I wouldn't be the person I am today either, because you learn so much different things from different people. So just make your clubs as welcoming and as available as possible. You know, like Paul, I take people to Paul all the time just to have some fun in a race chair, to be totally honest. But as long as you make them feel welcome, then that is the most important thing. And if they want to pursue the sport, whether it's at an elite level or it's just at a come and try level, like club runner level, just accept that and still give them exactly the same attention. You know, when I go along and train with Paul, he gives me the same input, same level of expertise that he does for the kids that we have rolling around the track with us, and it's awesome. You know, everyone deserves the same level of interest and expertise. So yeah, share it out equally and love what you do as well. We know as athletes, you can always see someone's passion when they enjoy what they're doing. So just let it out, because it's so amazing to see.
No, well, thank you very much, Hannah, for giving up your time. I know I've learned so much about you that I didn't know it before, and I'll take some of your points into kind of my coaching, and I'm sure everybody else has learned so much. We're just going to do I think there's some questions in the chat, so I'll just read them out, and then we can both kind of like answer them, or everyone will probably want to hear from you, so I'll just read them out. So let me just have a look. So how did you feel going from school where you had teachers who weren't able to include you in PE to having Paul as a coach?
I think I felt lucky that I'd found someone that understood me and was willing to give me the chance. If anything, it made me a little bit frustrated that Paul just made it look so easy, and yet these teachers had always kind of made it look like the most difficult thing. But I think I just didn't even relate the two together, to be honest. I just felt excited that I finally had this opportunity. And I'll never hold a grudge against my teachers at school, ever. Like, they always did the best they could for me, and you know, I went to school in the 90s, so I'm quite old. So things hopefully have moved on a lot since then.
I guess it's like Paul's obviously forward thinking and taking time to kind of research and like, what can we do to get like people involved and get the most out of them. And I think nowadays there's a bit more resources for that. I know my boyfriend's trained to be a PE teacher, and they do a lot of like disability sport and kind of talks and stuff, so they know like kind of like how can we include like a range of people into sport, and I guess those can be applied for anyone. So your next question is, how much of a barrier do you think the cost of specialist equipment often needed in para sport is a barrier for people getting involved?
Massively. I think it's a massive barrier, and I think it's a real problem, to be fair. I think it puts people off, especially with my sport. Like I said, like a bog standard race chair, you're looking at thousands of pounds, which people just don't have. And I know that there are limited clubs around the country. So we've got a wheelchair racing club in Leeds with Paul. We've got the club that I train with in Liverpool, in Kirby. There's a club in Stockport, and then there's obviously Weir Archer in London, Red Star in Scotland, and there's one more right down south. The fact that I could just reel them off, the places where you can go to try wheelchair racing is disappointing, to be honest. And we need to get to a point where every running club in the country has a race chair for someone to go and try, because ultimately we're just athletics. Like, okay, you have to learn the technique and all these things, but if you don't even get the opportunity to try it, if you have to drive hours to even sit in a race chair, then people are less likely to do it and less likely to take our sport up. So it's a massive barrier. I don't really know how we tackle it, but well, like I said, I eventually want to see a race chair in every club, but until then, you just gotta have the chairs ready and waiting. So Paul's got chairs if anyone wants to come and have a go.
I guess because like I remember seeing a statistic, and I think it was about like Olympic sport, and it was like the majority of people are from like a middle class like background, and it's like, well, I'm fairly normal and I don't have the money to like go and buy specialist equipment, and I guess probably most people are the same. So yeah, it's a bit of a challenge, you know, if you're not just from money, or you don't have money lying about, and maybe don't get like the support for somebody to drive you about to these clubs, because as you've said, like they're all, it's kind of, there's not like a specialist like equipment and stuff in every club, and so it does make it challenging. And I don't know if that's like there needs to be more funding within para sport to make like this equipment available for everyone, because you could be missing the next Paralympic champion just because they've not had the opportunity, or we've not been aware of like the potential they have in if it's wheelchair racing or wheelchair basketball. But yeah. Another question for you, Hannah, is once you stop competing, would you like to do more coaching with other athletes?
Yeah, it's not my end goal, but I feel like I've had so much knowledge and expertise kind of imparted onto me that it'd be such a shame for me to just leave the sport and take that with me. So yeah. Anya's my starting point. She's my test monkey, and then I'll move on from there. But yeah, I would like to do it. I would love eventually Paula's job as head coach. I think I'd be great at that. But the end goal is I want to be a TV presenter. So anything I can fit around that is fine.
Yeah, well, I guess because there is like quite a small percentage of like para coaches. Like I guess, we haven't had any kind of. Well, I know. Well, none of my coaches have had a disability, and none of yours have. And like, do you think that would make a difference if you had like a disabled coach, maybe somebody understands maybe some of the things that you go through? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think we definitely need more disabled coaches in the system, massively. Not the able-bodied coaches that they don't understand, but in a way, there are things with having a disability that an able-bodied person will just never ever know. And I think just again, it's that thing of if you can't see it, you can't be it, you know. So for me, I never really thought about being a coach. You know, I always said growing up, like when I first got into sport, I was like, I definitely don't want to do that. And I think that was because I never saw anybody like me doing that. So I always kind of figured like, well, how would I lift someone on and off a roller? How would I help people transfer into their chairs? And the thing is, you don't have to be able to do that. You know, there are people that can actually help with that. As a coach, you have to have the knowledge. And especially with wheelchair racing, and unless you've got in that chair and you've given it a push, there are things that you're not going to know. So yeah, it's definitely something we need to increase. And I think, you know, Nathan, my boyfriend, definitely wants to be a coach. He did sports coaching at university. So yeah, he actually did it at Liverpool John Moore, so there you go.
There you go.
But there's always a link. So I think it's really, really important. It's definitely something that we need to push more to get more of them.
Okay, so you've got 2 more questions. So your next one is, what do you think is most important for a new coach in parasport?
Oh, that's a hard question. What do I think is most important? I think be passionate about it, like, but as well, don't just accept that you don't know everything. Like, I don't know everything about wheelchair racing. I've been doing this forever. Like, you will always be learning, and that's the magic of sport. That's the magic of coaching sport. So I think just don't let anything scare you. If you don't know it, if you want to know something and you don't know it, whether it's about disability, whether it's about the sport, whether it's, I don't know, about events, whatever it might be, just ask the question. I don't know about you, but as a disabled person, I would much rather people just ask me about what I struggle with or what help I need than them assume or ask someone else instead of asking me. Like, don't be afraid of doing that. That's the only way that you learn. So just ask the questions and go for it.
I think most people like won't mind. Like, because how are you meant to like learn about the person? This could be about like any disabled or not disabled. How are you going to get to know about them and their needs if you don't speak to them? So I guess, as you said, just like ask, and that's the best thing to do. And like, it can be maybe seen as a bit of an offense, you know, if you're kind of asking like somebody else, because it kind of, I don't know, for me it kind of gives that impression of I'm not able to kind of answer my own questions and stuff. And I think just as you said, you've hit the nail on the head a bit about just being open and honest, and that's probably the best way to be. How do you both balance the training life while having a social life?
Oh, good question. I don't have a social life.
Same.
I think most of my friends are athletes, to be totally honest.
Yeah.
So I think I've been doing this for so long that my friends, even if they're not athletes, they just get it. So I'm able to just say to them like, oh, I'm really sorry, I can't come to the party, or I can't come out tonight, or whatever we're doing. And they just go, okay, like, have a good session tomorrow. I'll see you later.
Yeah.
And it is like, sometimes I just have to force myself to be social because, you know, we go training and I'm tired and I can't be bothered.
Yeah.
So yeah, balancing it, just have understanding friends and family. And if they don't get what you're trying to do, then they're probably not worth hanging around, to be honest. And make yourself do it. You know, for a long time I fell into that trap of like, oh, I can't do anything else because I'm training. It's so
Yeah.
important to still have that side of you that's not Hannah the athlete or Maria the athlete. Yeah, just make yourself do it sometimes. But that time is
Yeah.
not now. We are training for Paralympic Games.
No, because I think like I suffered quite badly with mental health, and I was really self-conscious about my disability, and I kind of hid behind my running, as a way to kind of avoid being around other people, and it just like kind of then just affected everything, like just because running was my whole life, and when that wasn't going right, then everything was rubbish. So I think for me, I've kind of learned that I need to have a bit of a balance. So like I need to make sure I make time for to go and kind of like push myself out my comfort zone and like see some friends and that, which I'm fine with now. But also, I think it's fine. Like if you've done your training, then I think it's all right to go and see like your friends and stuff. But I think also making sure you've got something else going on instead of the trainings, just so everything's a bit more balanced, and like there's a bit more to life than just like training and athletics. And I think that's like for me, that's the best way to be. I don't know, what do you think about that, Hannah?
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. You have to be more than an athlete, and that's something that Peter Erickson definitely drummed that into me. You know, he always used to say to me, there is life after athletics, so what are you ready for it? You have to be ready for it. So, you know, it's because of him I went to university. Okay, I didn't finish my course, but I absolutely loved my time there. And you know, I think for me, kind of the athlete balance really crept in lockdown. I found myself like training all hours, always answering emails, and I found in lockdown, like, right, 6 o'clock, I don't answer any more emails. You know, me and Nathan will have dinner, or we'll go and watch a film, or you'll know, we'll just switch off. So even if it's something around the house, you have to allow yourself that time to go, right, I'm not answering his email now, or I'm not answering my coach right now, or whatever it might be. You just have to allow yourself to do that, and that really helped me balance it. I think as much as we have to be self-disciplined to do our training and to do everything that comes with being an athlete, you have to be just as disciplined to allow yourself the time to say, this is it, like I don't want to be an athlete right now, so I'm just gonna go and have fun. And that's just as hard sometimes as getting up and doing the training. Definitely is.
Definitely. Well, I think that's all the questions. So thanks, Hannah. Like it's been amazing having you on, and like you're a celebrity within the athletics world, and it's been an honor to have you on our second kind of webinar. And I'm sure everybody's sorry. Can I have a second question? Yeah, you can have a second question if you'd like. But
you have to type it quick.
Yeah, but no, I've learned so much from you, and I'm sure everybody else has, and it's been amazing. So thank you very much for giving up your time, and
thank you for having me.
Hopefully the packing isn't too bad. And here's our final question. What is most important in a relationship between a coach and an athlete?
So for me, communication. I think, you know, I've said it the whole way through. We discussed that every athlete is an individual, so you have to have that open and honest communication line. And I have had it with Jenny sometimes where I've shut that off, or she shut that off, and that's made it really quite difficult. But you just have to have it, and you have to be understanding. both ways. You know, I understand why Jenny wants me to do things, even if I don't want to do it. She understands why sometimes I put my foot down and I'm like, no, this isn't working. As long as you have that, then you can work around it. But as soon as you shut those communication lines, then that's when things start to go wrong. So from experience, always the communication.
Yeah, that's really important. I think something I also kind of feel is kind of seeing somebody past the athlete and the coach, like there's a person behind that, and it's just kind of considering their feelings and stuff, and there's perhaps other things going on. So I think it's kind of reflecting that and just remembering that when, I don't know, when maybe there's been a bad performance, or there's been a fallout, or something's going wrong in coaching, it's kind of, I think that's something that's quite important.
Definitely.
So I think, is that all the questions? I think that is. So no, thank you very much, everyone. I hope you've had a good afternoon, and thanks again, Hannah.
No problem. Nice to talk to you.